They offered me $5.5 million for the one business that I just paid 1.3 for. And then they were like, how much is the other one worth?
All right, Steve. Thanks so much for coming on today, man. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Ed recommended we talk to you, and from everything I've looked at, you're a pretty accomplished dude. So I'm looking forward to diving into this.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to chatting.
So for people who don't know you yet, tell us a little bit about your story. Pretty interesting. It looks like you went, from ESPN all the way up to a business career. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Northern Michigan, went to Michigan State, studied TV, radio, and film there, kind of was what I wanted to do as a career, and ended up, had a really fun time there, learned a bunch of cool stuff, got into a specialized niche called Steadicam. And it's just a specialized camera stabilization system. So I did that kind of throughout college, interned at ESPN when I was at Michigan State. And that turned into a full-time, like my first full-time job offer after I graduated was at ESPN in Bristol, Connecticut at the mothership. Landed my dream job probably 3 months after I graduated. So that was awesome. Super fun experience. Couldn't believe it. It landed my dream job right out of the gates. And so it only took me 1 year to quit and realize that I wasn't a very good employee. I was fine as an employee there, but I knew that, man, this is probably not for me. And I wasn't making enough money, and I had student loan payments, kind of the typical deal, and was like, this is going to be a long grind if I stick this out.
Right.
Wasn't making all that much money when I first started, but, resume building, working on shows like that I grew up watching. So that was a really cool experience. Bought my own equipment, moved to New York City for for like 6 months, and then ultimately moved to Dallas, Fort Worth, where I live now, and I've lived since. And that was back in 2011, 2010. And so did a political show for a little while after I left ESPN, and then got back into sports and traveled around the country doing college football, some NFL football, pro golf, college baseball, cornhole. I mean, you name it. I did it. Any
Love
type
the
of
cornhole.
Sport, any type of sport you can think of, I did it. And so it was fun. It was a great career. Throughout that time, I had a pretty good work-life balance. Like I'd work maybe 150, 200 days a year, all travel. Anytime outside of that was home, could kind of do whatever I want, right? So when I wasn't working, I wasn't working. Had gotten married, didn't have any kids yet, so I spent a lot of my time learning about business. When I first left ESPN, I worked on a political show. We had Robert Kiyosaki, who was a guest on our show. And his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, was laying out on the desk in the studio. And I picked it up and I started reading it. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. So I bought it on my phone and like read it on the subway to work every day for a few days. And then I read everything else he's ever written, right? He just kind of sent me down the rabbit hole. And I was self-employed at this point. So I was like feeling pretty good about myself, young 20s, making pretty good money when I left ESPN and started working for myself. And so I just started side hustling. I started trying a zillion different things, right? Starting whatever you could imagine. E-commerce, drop shipping. I was drop shipping those hoverboards when those were hot one year.
Oh yeah.
Actually, it was kind of crazy, but but a lot of short-lived things, right? So we're just kind of trying to figure it out. My wife and I started a photo booth company at one point, but we're both working and then doing that on the weekends, and really didn't know how to hire people. And so kind of a lot of trial by fire. So anyway, I stuck with the TV thing for 10 years. COVID happens, and that's kind of where things really changed. Well, sports shut down globally overnight. I was on a flight, had a flight scheduled to go do an NBA game, like, a few days into the future. And the NBA was the first league to basically be like, no, we're shutting down.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, this is interesting. Right. So I had no clue how long it was going to take, what was going to happen. At the same time, we had just found out my wife was pregnant with our twins. Life came at me real fast. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I got no work for an unforeseen amount of time. I didn't panic. My wife had a great career, and I had other stuff, side stuff going. And we lived below our means. Like we didn't overstretch ourselves or anything. So nobody panicked, but it was at this time where I was like, well, I got kids on the way. I don't want to travel forever or for very much longer if I don't have to, especially with two young kids, coming into our lives before we know it. So I was like, now's never been a better time than now to buy a business. And so I'd become friends with a business broker. So I knew a little bit about, kind of buying and selling in that SBA range,
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to him and was like, hey man, I want to buy he always told me to buy a small service business. And I was like, okay, let's go help me buy a service business. So I went down this road, and I ended up buying a really small deal. We can talk about the economics of it if you want, but I bought
Sure.
a really small one-man truck crime scene cleanup company in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. So went from camera guy to after death cleanup is the best way to put it. We did a lot of that, a lot of biohazard cleanup. Crime scene's kind of the buzzword, but it was just more after death stuff.
Mm.
Anytime that there's blood and bodily fluids and anything that's just a normal cleaning company won't touch because of the hazards associated with it.
Yeah.
We came in there, and a lot of those jobs are paid for by homeowners insurance. So very, very lucrative industry. So I bought that from a young guy who had it for a couple of years. He was formerly a franchisee in that space, sold his franchise units, moved to Dallas Fort Worth, started up another one private because it was outside of his non-compete area,
Hmm.
and then wanted to move to Hawaii. So he was selling it, and I was like, great, I'll buy it from you.
Right.
So borrowed money from 401k to pay for it. At the time, the CARES Act allowed us to do that as long as I paid it back within 3 years. Because of COVID, the CARES Act had a bunch of stuff as part of it, but one of them
Mm.
was you could borrow money from your retirement accounts for business purposes as long as you pay it back within 3 years. No penalties, no fees, no interest, none of that stuff. You just
Yeah.
basically give yourself an interest-free loan. So I did that. And then, so that's how I was able to acquire that first one, and then built that up over a couple of years. And
Organically.
yeah, just marketing, trying to market better, trying to get
Mm.
more referral sources. So it was a lot of paid ads, Google ads, those types of things. And yeah, we just kind of it was really I really bought a startup that just kind of had a head start. You know what I mean? Like it
Right.
was so small. It was doing a couple $100,000 in revenue, 60K in net
Hmm.
owners, net owner SDE, whatever you want to call it. And I paid 120 grand for it. I paid 2x.
Mm. Yeah.
And so, yeah,
You f-
little
you-
small
you
little
f-
deal.
Yeah. Do you feel like that was a good way to start to get into it, like easier, or do if you could go back, like, oh, I should have started with a bigger one?
I get asked this question every time
Mm.
because I'll tell you about the next one that I bought, and the path that I took, it worked for me. Like
Hmm.
it was easy barrier of entry. I was able to. I had to replace like 130 to 150K a year of income if I wanted to
Yeah.
leave TV.
Hmm.
So I made that for like 10 years. It's just that's how much you made working as much as I worked, and didn't really go up or down as long as I was working.
Right.
And so it had 60K when I bought it. And so it didn't take me all that long, maybe a year to get it up over the 6-figure mark to where it was close enough to where I was like, okay,
Hmm.
I don't have to do the TV thing anymore. So to answer your question, it worked out well for me. Like I got
Hmm.
to learn business in the trenches, doing more than you would potentially have to do in a bigger business. And then gave me the confidence to go buy a bigger
Right.
one, leverage SBA debt. And the second one I bought on market, biz buy sell. I wasn't looking for a business, but I was clearly looking, right? So I
Right.
mean, it's just the way it was, and I was like, whoa. I was always just trying to see what was for sale out there in my industry, really,
Mm.
and I was like, ooh, this is interesting. It's in Florida. I live in Texas. One hurdle, but it was 20 years old, doing $1 million in revenue versus what
Mm.
we were doing.
Yeah.
By the time I had gotten it up to $300,000-400,000 in revenue in my business, they were doing 1 million, and they were netting 450. Really good
Mm.
margins in that space.
Yeah.
I was like, man, it was for sale for 1.25. So yeah, man, one thing led to another, and I reached out. I flew to Florida, met with people, and was like, I convinced them to sell it to me. They wanted to feel good about it, handed
Safe
it
pair of
over to
hands.
somebody else. Yeah. And then I had to convince the SBA to give me a loan that you're not really keen on owner absentee stuff with the SBA,
Right.
you know,
Hmm.
but it was almost like an expansion loan because I already owned a business in the same space.
Right.
Um, but I just had to kind of show them in the bank that was doing the loan, like, hey, this is my plan. This is what I want to do. Obviously, I had to have a business plan, all that stuff, and was able to get approved for the loan. And the deal structure was, I think, my favorite part. So I was able to get the seller to do 5% seller note on full standby, which at the time was full standby for the whole 10-year note,
Hmm.
which SBA rules have changed now. They only require 2 years. Would have been a lot easier to sell,
Right.
to a seller to only have to wait 2 years to get your money instead of 10. But got them to do it because it was only 5%, so they counted that 5% towards my 10% down payment that they required.
Yeah.
And then I brought my brother in, sold him 5% of the opportunity for the other 5%. And then there's SBA fees, working capital. So I brought 20 grand cash of my own cash to
Mm.
closing. to buy it. And it was a $1.3 million deal total. I bought 50K of the AR accounts receivable.
Got it.
1.25 purchase price, 10-year note, variable interest, pretty standard SBA deal. Took forever,
Right.
SBA, and it was my first SBA deal. And so, knowing what I know now, it should go quicker the second time. But then acquired the second one. So the whole buy big, I typically tell people I think it's easier to buy a bigger one if you have the risk tolerance and if it's the right fit.
Yeah. Well, if you probably know the industry too, right? If you would have gone straight into the big one, might have been a little tougher.
I don't think they would have sold it to me.
Right. Yeah.
So, my specific example, I had to do it the way that I did it. It's just the way that it worked out. But
which is how I just did it for mine. So I was asking that because I did the same thing. I bought a smaller one, 100% seller finance deal, smaller than what I would liked, but think about, it's low risk. I can hand the keys back, learn a lot about the process, say that I've bought a business. So when I go to the next one, it's like, hey, look, I've already done this before.
Yeah. I think it's great. I think it's a great way to do it. And it gets you in the game, right? Getting in the game is the hardest barrier of entry, right? And it's easier to get into a small deal is fast,
Right.
No bank, no SBA, me and a guy, one lawyer,
handshake,
a lot of trust. Let's go do it. Show me how to do this business. So yeah, I like that path. And it worked out for me, and obviously it worked out for you too.
It's a little bit more work up front, but you're learning through that work. So
100%.
That was my from it.
Yeah, that was my MBA.
Right.
I don't have a finance degree. I was a camera guy a few years ago.
Right.
Nothing against camera guys. Love them. I was one, but we're not, a lot of us aren't finance.
It's not a business owner, right?
Yeah. We're just, we're self-employed guys. We know how to do camera and we know sports, and that's what we do.
Right.
So yeah, acquired the second one. This is where things get a little crazy. During due diligence, I saw that they were severely underbilling insurance compared to what we were billing. And I was like, ooh, which is good, right? I was like, that should be an easy, quick fix, something to boost the bottom line right out of the gates.
Right.
Give me some breathing room, just extra cushion, everything, as far as making that note payment, because that note payment was real.
What was your cover ratio on that?
I had to pay, the debt ate up close to 50% of the cash flow.
Okay. So two.
On a yearly basis. And that's kind of what, if it's priced right-ish around 3X,
two's comfortable.
Kind of what you see. Yeah. Yeah. A couple $100,000 a year. So it was probably a little bit less because it was making 450. And I think I think it's $200,000 a year in debt service.
Yeah. So it's so
a little bit below. Yeah. Felt really good about it. And then once I got the business and I took over, and I sat down, I was like, all right, show me how we're doing this billing process, because something's not right here. We're billing way less than industry average. They got all the best jobs, all the insurance jobs. They had great relationships. And I think they just didn't want to mess with their insurance relationships. And I was like, okay, that's fine, but we need to change this. So we fixed the billing overnight, and it was, they were underbilling by 60, 65%.
Really?
Big giant, our average tickets went from 6,000, 7,000 to 13,000, 14,000. So it was just like, whoa,
double.
We were way underbilling. And so overnight the financials changed. Well, I got a couple crappy line items that they had in the invoices out of there too. And now we're billing more. Insurance is not pushing back as much. So bills are getting paid faster. And it was like, and then they were just doing really well at the time. Like they were on fire, right? So we were breaking sales records because we were billing more, but we're also breaking job records. Like the phone was ringing off the hook. We were doing more jobs than we'd ever done, month after month after month. And so 3 months in, I'm like, man, this is awesome. We're crushing it, And so it couldn't have been a better start. I converted their business operations manager into a GM right away, gave her a raise, gave the salesperson a raise, gave the, it was just making everybody happy.
Yeah, like that Oprah, you get a raise, you get a raise.
So yeah, exactly. So we did that. And then I was looking for a new space because I was leasing from the people that I bought from. It was very known between us, like, hey, I wasn't going to stay there forever. It was their building. They didn't want to sell the building. She actually officed out of it and ran some other companies. So I started.
Is that why they wanted to sell other interests? Sounds like things were going pretty well.
Yeah, other interests. They've been in it for 20 years, and they owned a lot of other businesses. Family members, other parents and stuff owned other businesses in town, and so I think they had another project, and they wanted to sell this and take the proceeds and go do that.
Got it.
So, because they were youngish, they were not retirement age, older than me, but not retirement age. So things are going great, and I was talking to another guy about his business that was for sale. And it was up in Birmingham. So I'm looking at another one. I'm like, man, maybe I should buy another one. I don't know. Well, he was like, I'm under contract to sell to like the big player in the space. I can't say who it is. And I was like, well, I know who it is. That's all he had to say. Like a small industry. I
Right.
was like, oh, I know who that is. And so I was like, all right, well, keep me posted. Let me know how it goes. So we ended up selling to them. And I was like, tell me, like, what was it like? Nobody in our space really likes them, but you sold to them anyway. How did you feel? Anyways, he had great things to say. And he's like, ultimately, they're owned by private equity. And that's really who I dealt with. And they were awesome. I was like, okay, well, I would love an introduction to them, uh, maybe next year or the year after or something. He's like, yeah, get a year of financials. Sounds like you're crushing it. Get a year of those new financials, kind of be able to paint the picture of this new normal for your business.
Right.
And then have the conversation with them, see what happens. Well, I'm looking for spaces to lease, and I'm staring down the barrel of 5, 6, 7 year lease. And I'm like, so I go back to him. I'm like, hey man, should I sign a new lease? Are they like, how did they handle it with you? Do they care, not care? Like, are they going to need the space or not? Cause they're big enough. Are they going to absorb me? Like, how's this all going to work? Just wanted to get his feedback.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, man, I wouldn't sign a lease. I don't think they're going to want it. And you're going to get locked into a long-term lease. And I was like, okay, well, what do I do? And he's like, well, let's have the conversation now. I'll introduce you. I said, okay. So he got me in touch with them. Mind you, I bought this business like 3 months prior.
Right.
And I'm talking to the guys, and these are like, maybe these guys have finance degrees, right? Like they work for a big private equity firm that like I went to their website, look at all the stuff they owned. I was like, oh my Lord. So I'm talking to guys with finance degrees, and they're wearing suits, and I've got my hat on backwards and a t-shirt and cleaning up after people die. And, they're like, well, hey man, we're really interested in your business. And I was like, okay, well, here's what happened. Here's what's going on. I kind of plan to sell, package them together, sell them in a couple of years, maybe learn what's going on in the Florida business, implement it into my Texas business so it can grow because it's still really, really small. And they're like, well, we don't want to wait. We want to buy both of your businesses. And I was like, okay. I mean, sure. Like everything's for sale always. Like there's always a number. Mm-hmm. I mean, as much as people want to say that there's not, there's almost always a number.
Yeah.
And so I was like, look, here's what we're doing. Here's what I think it's going to be worth in 2 years, open market, 2 years of tax returns. And I gave him a number. I threw a number out, and I was like, if you can come close to that number, we'll probably have a conversation to be had. And they're like, we think we can give you a number that you will heavily consider. I was like, okay, sure. So we went down that road. They asked for some financials, some basic stuff, nothing too crazy, just enough for them to put an LOI together. And they were like, we want to make you an offer. And I said, okay. But they were like, so we had some of those conversations. A couple of weeks later, they come back with an LOI, and they wanted to buy both. And I really didn't want to sell the small one. I was like, man, it's so small. I just massively like increase the value of the other one. So I'll get rid of that one if I have to. Plus it's in a state that I don't live in. There's some inherent risk there. I've got the SBA debt. And I was like, perfect. Let's quick flip that one, take what I learned, improve the other one, and then sell it in a few years. Well, they didn't want to do that either. I want to buy both. But they wanted to do a big earnout. So I was like, I don't want to do a big earnout. If I'm going to sell this thing before I even wanted to sell it, I want all cash at closing. I want to get this deal done. And they're like, if we do all cash at closing for the prices that we've offered or that we're talking about, would you sell both of them? And I'm like, of course. And I said, yeah, probably. I mean, I'd be hard to turn that offer down. They're like, all right, we're going to put that in the LOI and we'll send it to you. I was like, okay. So they sent it to me, and it was just, I kind of had some numbers in mind and some ideas, but ultimately I thought it was very fair for what we had going on. And it was just too crazy to turn down. So they offered me $5.5 million for the one business that I just paid 1.3 for.
Wow.
And then they were like, how much is the other one worth? And I was like, I don't know. I think like 350,000 probably. And they're like, all right, we'll offer you 350 for that one. And I'm like, well, I guess I should have said 500.
Yeah.
That was just like a tip, that was like extra change. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm sitting, and then they offered to buy my accounts receivable. I had about $300,000 in accounts receivable. So I'm like, all in, it was like a $6.1 million offer for both businesses. And I had just bought one 3 months prior.
Right. Not too shabby.
And I'm like, I talked to my CPA, I talked to my attorney, I talked to my wife, obviously, business mentors of mine. And I'm like, hey, look, I'm pretty sure I'm going to do this deal. I just want to make sure I'm not doing anything stupid. And they're like, dude, if you don't do that deal, we're all going to have to sit down together and have an
Right.
intervention, they're like, don't count, or don't, like, it's just so, because they want to do $1 million earnout on those numbers. And so I was like, man, I just don't. And the earnout was going to be tied to performance and all this other crap.
Hmm.
And I was like, no,
Would you have to stay on for that too?
probably not. I mean, they
Mm.
didn't really need me, they own such a big player in the space. They just wanted the referrals and the book of business.
Yeah.
They did want to keep a lot of, some of the employees in Florida. Some stayed, some didn't, and they just did whatever they did. But so yeah, I just wasn't interested in the earnout. And so when I got them to go away from that, then I had to sell both companies, which was fine. It just wasn't my preference. But look, man, I was like, it's just a small price to pay. So anyway,
Right.
yeah. So look, I caught lightning in a bottle, kind of a crazy story, but I tell people all the time, like, the only way that happens is because I was in the game. Only way that
Right.
happens is I went, got a small one, took the risk, bought the bigger one, and then, hey man, crazy stuff happens. It's not going to happen maybe ever again in my life, but I'm not expecting it to. I had one run, but for 10 years prior to that, I started a zillion things and they all were
Right.
crap, failed,
Hmm.
whatever. I started an apparel company,
Classic
which
move.
don't even think I sold one shirt, but
Classic.
I
I feel like
have
that's
one
the
of the,
rite of passage, right? You
Yeah.
got to do a
yeah,
t-shirt company.
yeah,
Do
I
you have
still
a
have the t-shirt. It's got like paint stains on it. I still wear
Mm.
it. I'm like, look at this, business failure. This one stunk. This
Yeah.
is,
we've all
this
got a
is one
few of
of the
those, I
losses.
think.
Yeah. So I like wearing it.
$2,400 t-shirt, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Most expensive t-shirt I own's got paint on it in a worn out logo that I made
Mm.
up 10 years ago. So, so yeah, sold it. They closed in like 45 days. Super, I mean, no SBA, no bank, still a lot of like stuff back and forth,
Yeah, I'm sure
giving them
DD
everything under
was,
the sun.
yeah.
Yeah. That's my, that was my MBA. It happened in about 3 years, and it wasn't all easy. I know that for sure. There's definitely, especially with the small one, there's definitely months where we didn't, it's such a roller coaster.
Yeah.
We'd be doing a few $100,000 a year. Shoot, one month I'd do 50 grand in sales, and one month I'd do 2,500 in sales. You know what I
Wow.
mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm like, well, I'm not working in TV anymore, so I better figure this out.
Mm.
But yeah, man, that was a wild ride, and I still can't really believe that it all happened, but here we are.
Mm.
Love it. I feel like there's a lot to unpack there because I feel like we're on a similar path doing, a bit of a roll up in the home service space with the intent to sell to private equity in 3 to 5 years. So it's pretty cool hearing your perspective on it all.
Yeah.
Mm.
What are you guys rolling up?
Electrical, HVAC, plumbing. Starting with electrical. So Jaron was an electrician for 15 years.
Okay.
And then I have a marketing agency and used to be a financial advisor and a lot of sales experience. So if we can take those two and put them together, should get something pretty powerful.
Yeah. Awesome.
Mhm.
I also saw you moving heavy weights on social media today.
Yeah, got a new deadlift PR yesterday.
I saw that. I was like, geez, guess we're not going to try and pick a fight with this guy.
You could. You might know jujitsu. You'll beat me.
No, I don't. And I'm small, a short guy. But yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool. So you boiled it down. So start to finish, I guess, from buying that business, it's what, like 4 months or something like that. Was that turnaround period?
It's just under 5 months. Yeah,
Hmm.
it was before the 5th month started.
Yeah. And so how many businesses did you look at when you said you weren't looking, but you're looking? How many of those did you look at before you found that one? And did you know, like, this is the one? Or tell me about that process, because that's something.
The first one or the second one?
The second one, because that's something where, like, there was probably a lot of work that actually went into that to find, like, this is the one. I'm sure you didn't just throw in darts and that's the first one you found.
No, I had found a couple. Well, there was only ever so many. I would do a United States wide search on Biz Buy Sell for my specific keyword industry buzzwords: crime scene, biohazard, hoarding, those types of things, to see what came up. There was a lot of resales in There's a handful of franchises in that space, so there was some franchise resales. Wasn't really interested in that, and so I was really looking for privately owned ones anywhere in the country. At the time that I was looking and that I found that one, there was 2 for sale, right around the same size, right around the same price. And I called the first one, which was the other one, and the broker was like, "Dude, we got 10 offers. We're going to go under contract. Like, it's, we've already picked one." I was like, "Okay, cool. Congrats." And then I called the second one and they were like, "Yeah, we're taking offers right now. We got a lot of people interested. And so then I kind of went to, but I wasn't only looking at crime scene cleanup. It just made sense. It seemed like
Yeah.
so much logical. I was looking for other service businesses potentially in Dallas, Fort Worth.
Mhm.
I even thought about, other things that like are referral partners. There's body pickup companies that would be great referral partners in our space to say, well, let's go acquire one of those, and then we can refer all the jobs to the other business. But
Right.
it was just easier for me to go find something that was on market existing. And yeah, I found that. Now it was a long deal process, I will say, because there was a lot of negotiation back and forth. There was some deal fatigue for sure towards the end with SBA, with communication between brokers, and there's a lot of different parties involved.
Mhm.
Both sides have attorneys, both sides have brokers. Then there's the bank. The bank wants everything, and it's the SBA rules. And so um, there was definitely some tension and some times where I was like, I don't know if I want to buy from this lady, number one. And number two, she was like getting fed up. She was like, this is taking too long. Like I should have already sold my business. So she was frustrated too, and understandably so.
Mhm.
It took forever,
How long did it
so
take?
9 months.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a long deal.
That's long.
Yeah. So it should have probably took about 5 months, maybe
Mhm.
4 or 5 months, maybe 6 months. I would have been pretty happy with, but looking back, it took what it took,
Mhm.
So, and each party had their own part of that, right? Like, did she always respond fast enough? Did I always respond fast enough? And
Mhm.
there's middle people asking for stuff from both sides and then compiling information. So there's a lot of moving pieces, getting on the call with all the attorneys at the same time to go through the red line of the APA to try and, it's like,
Right.
there's a lot of involved stuff there. So way different than my first deal, which again was just more of a handshake deal, much less risk, smaller, and let's just get to business. But this had employees and everything was, yeah. So it was a long deal, but in the end worth it. And I learned a ton, for sure, especially for whatever I do next. And it was very, very valuable experience.
I'd like to dive in a little bit more on maybe part of that buying process. We're calling this self-made. It's all about, going out and doing the work. And, we talk about the story, in 3 months you buy this business and flip it for, $6 million, but there's a lot that went into that.
Mhm.
One of the things is you said you flew out and kind of won over the buyers. It sounds like they had different offers on the table, but they ended up going with you. Tell me a little bit about that, about like, what did you do to woo them or kind of bring them to see you as the best seller or the best buyer?
Yeah, I think it helped. I think the other players that were at the table as far as offers go, were had other experience that was not directly related to this industry. So my industry experience really gave me a leg up.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't know, going out and meeting them in person, I think we meshed well. Like we had a great meeting. I was very impressed by her business acumen. She was very, very good. She had obviously built a very, very good business, and I just tried to go there and be myself. And I'm not really a BS type of guy, I just
Mm-hmm.
kind of say it as it is. And, sometimes I say the wrong things or talk too much or whatever, but at least you know what you're getting, at least it's real. And so, yeah, I don't know if there was anything that stuck out like specifically, but one of the things was we had gotten to a certain point where I was like, hey, let's have the next meeting and let's do it on Zoom. And the sell side was like, if you're serious, you need to come out here and meet in person. And it's like, and so I said, okay. So that was kind of their test, I think, to
Yeah.
me.
Right.
It's like, well, do you want to buy a plane ticket and rent a car and drive
Yeah.
up here to middle of Florida, and meet us at a diner,
Mm-hmm.
And so I did. I got on a plane and flew up there and drove. And, that costs hundreds, if not more than $1,000 to do all that,
Right.
stay in a hotel for one night and all that jazz. And so I was willing to risk that amount of money to say, like, if this doesn't work out, this is just a opportunity cost for what I'm trying to do. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I think that in itself was probably big. I'd maybe gotten to a point where I was like, hey, look, I really want to do this. This is a really, really good fit for me.
Mm-hmm.
My brokers liked it, attorneys like everything. And I was like, let's just do this. This seems like it makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So
did you paint like a vision for them? Like, here's what I'm going to do, or here's how I'm going to improve it? Or is it more like, hey, you did a really good thing, let me just continue it? Like, what did that look like?
yeah, I really told them, hey, look, one of the big things for me is, I want to learn what you guys did to build this business because I have a smaller one that I want to improve, right? I want to learn. I want to see the playbook. I want to see what you guys did to be successful over 20 years so that I can implement it in my other business. And my goal is just to keep the train going, right? You guys have obviously built a great business. I just want to step in, maybe a fresh set of eyes. And I had told them, I said, maybe I bill a little bit more. And so they understood what I was going to do. And I said, yeah, just I'll have more employees. I'll have a bigger business to try and operate and grow. And I just told them I really wanted the opportunity to do that. And I told them I cared about people. I kind of give the same spiel. Like, look, I don't think it's that. I kind of told them how I had grown my business and found good quality people to be on my team. I try to treat people right. I try to do the right. I preach to anybody that ever worked for me in both of those businesses. As a company, we're going to do the right thing. As an owner, I'm going to try as often as possible to do the right thing. And as employees, to your coworkers, to the company, and to our customers, all we have to do is do the right thing. It's really not typically that hard to do the right thing. Sometimes it sucks. Sometimes it's not your favorite thing, whether it's admitting you're wrong or fixing a mistake we did for a customer. Or, for instance, an employee was like, hey, I need to take a half day because I got to take my dog to the vet. And I was like, you don't need to take a half day to take your dog to the vet. You're a human being. Just take your dog to the vet and come back after the half day and get whatever work done you need to get done. So it was just hey, if I can treat you like a human being and care about you as a person and want to know about your family and want to know that you're happy here and you want to build a career here, then hopefully you'll want to look out for the company and look out for the customers and do what's best. And then we all win. So I tried to kind of paint that picture of that's just how I operated, and then service business, like you guys probably know, one of the reasons I like it is because it's not that hard to beat the competition. Because if you answer the phone, if you show up on time, if you provide detailed, estimates and quotes, and you communicate like basic customer service stuff, we would win jobs all the time because they would be like, you're the only ones who answered.
Right. Yeah.
Pretty awesome way to set the bar real low. So I was like, okay, well, and we sent them a text when we're on the way because we use House Call Pro in our business for the smaller one. And so just little things like that, and look, we dealt with people who were going through tragedy.
Yeah. Not
in business to treat these people wrong. We're in business. We have to charge money. We have to pay for, insurance. Like, look, you're going to have to pay your deductible. Your insurance is going to pay the rest. We're going to do a really quality job. We're the best at what we do, and we're going to take care of you. And we're going to go to the extra mile. We especially with our smaller company in Dallas, we would show up for estimates and they didn't want to go inside. So my crew would go in there and look through try to find the safe, try to find the wallet, try to find the will, like try to find this documentation for these people that are like flying in from out of town because a family member passed away. And they were like, we can't go in the house. It's too emotional for us. So doing the right thing, it's not hard, right? Like it's not hard to help people out. So, those are the things that I talked about, and hopefully it resonated with them to say, oh, okay, you just got to show them that you're a real person, a real human being, because they care about their employees. They care about their business, their baby. They built it, right? Like I've never built a company that big from the ground up. Every company that I tried to build didn't go anywhere. So I had to buy somebody else's, right? And so I wanted them to know that I cared and I valued that. And they're going to get, their value that they're getting is, monetary. Like I'm selling them, they're selling their company to me. So they're going to get money for what they did. But as much as that, they want to know that the person taking over isn't going to run this thing into the ground or fire all their employees and, treat everybody like crap or whatever, just be a bad person. So those things matter to people for sure.
Yeah. I feel like that's as big a part of it as like the money too. It's like, you're not going to screw it up or, get their employees fired. Like that's really important to them that you won't, tank the business they work for 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which made me turning around and flipping it a little bit not ideal for a lot of people.
Right. Yeah.
And that look, that's the part that I had to deal with, there's some folks that have a little sour taste in their mouth about me, including the person who's sold me their business. And including some of the employees who thought like, hey, we thought this was going to go a different way.
You did too, though. It sounds like
100%. It wasn't my plan.
Right.
But also it comes with the territory, right? Yeah. I personally guaranteed $1.3 million loan.
Right.
If things go south, I took the risk. And so with that risk, you're afforded the opportunity to make certain decisions. And I made the decision for the better. It was the best decision for me and my family. I've got 2 young kids. They're a little over three going on 4 years old now. So, I mean, anybody else in my position would have,
Right.
taken the deal, like it's easy to say like, oh, I wouldn't have taken the deal. And it's easy for me to say everybody would have taken it. Maybe they wouldn't have, I don't know. But it doesn't matter. I was in that position because I took on the risk and I did it. And something like that crazy happens. Like, yeah, but I can sleep at night knowing I made the decision for the best of myself and my family. And that the harsh truth about life is that it's not always going to be fair for everybody. In that scenario, it was way more fair for me than other people.
Right.
If that's how you want to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it comes with it, like, the risk reward, right? You pledged $1.3 million versus somebody who showed up for work, and, you're looking out for that person, but at the end of the day, they didn't have to go through that up and down.
Yep. Yeah. And they can, they could go, if somebody came and offered them twice as much money as they were making to do the same job.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be working for me anymore.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
And I probably wouldn't expect them to.
Right.
You find a better opportunity. Like, who am I going to be mad?
Right.
Like,
be happy for them.
Yeah. Go. Yeah. Go. I mean, if I truly want the best for you and your family, and you got a better opportunity, and especially if you gave me the opportunity to maybe match it, because okay, I like working for you, but this is what I'm getting over here. And I'm like, hey, look, this doesn't make sense for our business. Go take that job. Go do it. Maybe help me try and find a replacement for you, but
Sure,
you also don't owe me that either. If I don't feel like so
it's like it's back in the sports world, right? Players who only play on a team for 3 or 4 years get transferred. You might only have talent in the company for a while.
Yeah. That's why I like Texas and Florida, right to work states, right? Like, you can leave at any time and I can fire you at any time. Or I can do do whatever's in the best interest of the company or whatever the case may be. But, they're welcome to look for better opportunities too. And all I did was take a better opportunity.
Yeah. So, I'd love to jump in next. You got like post sale, you got the $6.1 million. I'm sure, taxes take out a bunch of it. What's the next step from there? I saw you have like a investment company, and then you mentioned about doing a potential franchise. I'd love to hear a little bit about those two. While we have a little time.
Yeah, the tax bill, not very fun. I did have the debt, obviously, so that got paid off. And then whatever's left over, my brother got a pretty good return on his investment too, for the amount that he was in on. Even though he thought it was going to last a little longer, I was like, hey man, just take your money. But yeah, so investment company is just trying to park my money in different places, like trying to become an investor. So like Robert Kiyosaki, if anybody's read any of his books, particularly Rich Dad, Poor Dad or Cash Flow Quadrant, he talks about employee, self-employed, business owner, and investor. Well, I'd been an employee for 1 year. I was self-employed for 10 years, and I was a business owner for 3 and some change. And then now I'm trying my hand at being an investor as well amongst it. So finding alternative investments, finding different places to park my money, learning about what those types of things and opportunities that are out there. I won't necessarily dive into what I'm invested in, but just really trying to see what other opportunities in different places, and working with my financial advisor as well as, other people who are out there, investing in alternative, deals, whether it's for tax savings or whether it's in real estate or just other high yield opportunities, different things, and trying to see where I can get my money working for myself and varying levels of risk profiles and those things, and just learning. I'm a new investor, so I'm trying not to screw it up, number one. And then, I took the last 9 months or so off. My wife left corporate America. We bought a new house, so we upgraded a little bit as far as, lifestyle goes and those types of things. But also spent a lot of time with the kids, young kids growing. They were kind of that 2 to 3 year old, range over the last 9 months. So that's been a lot of fun. And now it's just kind of time to get back to work, get back into my next deal. I was just kind of thinking about it I knew I wasn't, I knew I couldn't retire,
Right.
Technically, probably if I lived a certain lifestyle, could have retired and put the money in.
But then what are you going to do?
Yeah. 36 years old. Like, I'm not going to retire.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
So I took a 9-month midlife retirement, and now played a lot of golf, and I'll continue to play golf, just not as much. And so, but yeah, I went on the search. I was searching again for on market service businesses, but then I also opened up my search to franchise opportunities, and I was looking at both, looked at a ton of different options, and ultimately did settle on a franchise opportunity. I wanted to do multi-unit, and I landed on a retail mattress franchise called Snooze Mattress. So I'm super excited about that. I signed on to open 3 stores with them to start, with the hopes and goals to open, I don't know, 6, 10. Who knows what happens? Maybe only 3. We'll see how it goes. Maybe only 1. Maybe I'll only open 1 and I don't like it and I sell the other 2 territories. There's a lot of ways it could go. But I'm really excited about the opportunity. And I was looking. I just always thought I would do well in a franchise setting. I do really well with somebody. Like I like having the playbook. Like I like going to execute the playbook. I'm not necessarily an ideas guy as far as coming up with a new business idea or whatever it may be. So I like the franchise route, and it's just a little bit different. It's something different than I did last time. I was looking for an on-market existing business or a franchise resale, but I just didn't find something. And I was like, I kind of want to move forward. And so I found this opportunity with them. I'm going to be their first franchisee in Dallas Fort Worth. So I'm bringing the brand to DFW, which is super exciting. That industry is ripe for disruption. They're doing it. And there's big acquisition happening in the mattress space. Tempur-Pedic's buying mattress firms. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And it's a really, really cool time to be entering that space and then bringing their brand. They use technology. They try to make the mattress buying experience different than it's been and has been pretty much unchanged for a long time. So talking more about health and wellness as far as sleep goes and fitting people into the right products using technology. So that's kind of their big sale differentiator. And I fell in love with the brand, the opportunity, and the CEO and the team that he's put together. So that was really like, I wanted to know who I was getting into business with, especially when it comes to, a franchise opportunity, because it's a startup. Like starting from scratch, and it's a lot of hard work, and and it's retail. I've never been in retail before. So that'll be interesting, but especially when it comes to like space, right? Like retail space, very expensive. Learning about the entire process of build outs and the LOIs that go into like finding retail space, it's pretty fascinating. I'm learning a ton, and just really, really excited to open up and bring on great team members and build that out. I mean, I think building a multi-unit 3+ store location of that would be a really cool, nice portfolio item for me to have. That will be another sellable business entity.
What attracted you specifically for mattress? I know you said this company specifically, but like, what made you? It's kind of a different industry. What attracted you to that specifically?
I knew there was and I knew and then confirmed it's good margins.
Yeah.
Like simple-ish business model, right? A very 3,000 square foot-ish of retail space with a couple of employees per store. And you don't have to sell a ton, high ticket, high margin product. So you don't, and people, that's why most people are like, how do these mattress stores stay open? Every time I drive by, there's nobody in there, right? It's not a high traffic deal. It's high ticket and high margin. And so the economics of it were attractive. And there's something about, and this just has nothing to do with business sense, that there's something about having a physical retail store location that sounds so cool to me. Like being able to drive up and say, that's my store.
Yeah.
And then also having multi-unit. So multi-unit in like service business is you're just buying more territory. And that always, like when I was looking at it and they're like, we're going to let you service this whole area. I'm like, that's not even that big of an area. And I got to pay you more just to service it with the same business. Whereas retail is very much more like you can have 2 stores 10 miles away from each other, right?
It's more about demand.
So it was one of those things where I knew I could do multi-unit in that area and have multiple stores that all kind of supported each other. So that's kind of what attracted me to it. And then all the other things specifically about Snooze itself was, I think, what for sure got me to say, hey, I think this is the right fit for me.
So where are you at in the process for launching those?
Got 3 LOIs out on different properties in the different areas that we're looking at. I've already paid my franchise fees. I'm already onboarded with going through their checklist of process to open a store. Basically, there's like a checklist of things you got to go through. So, entities up, bank accounts open, money's been paid. French. I'm official. I own 3 territories. So the cool news is I do own 3 assets that are resellable. And since I bought 3, I get a little bit of a break on price, and so that's good. I kind of felt good about that. But yeah, now we're really the next step is getting real estate locked up and SBA kind of in parallel. So doing the SBA deal again for each store, a little bit different of a process.
For the build out?
100% build out. Yep.
Is the SBA is for the build out?
Yeah, the SBA is for the build out, and because the majority of the upfront cost are build out, lease,
inventory.
Some inventory is not as much as I actually thought it was going to be. It's still for sure there, but like the furnitures and fixtures and things you have to put in the store, and they have some technology and those types of things. But a lot of it's like it's retail, so its rent is expensive. You usually got to put down first month's rent plus plus a security deposit, and then you've got to do the build out. Even if you get some allowance, typically like if you're going to sign a 10-year lease, they'll give you an allowance, the landlord, to do the build out, but it usually doesn't. Not in all cases, at least in our market, it's probably not going to cover the entire cost of my build out. Mm-hmm. So it'll be subsidized a little bit in the lease agreement. But yeah, for the most part, the SBA loan is covering all of those different aspects. 3 months operating expenses for the store overhead. Right. Hiring your employees, grand opening, marketing, all that stuff is all kind of packaged into an SBA loan to get you started. It's a different loan process though than buying as existing. Obviously, there's less parties involved because there's not a seller, and so there's no financials and stuff like that. There's just like the franchise disclosure document, the FDD, and then a lot.
What
of
do
times,
they collateralize against then?
I mean, they don't. No, they don't. Just like a regular 7A loan. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, any assets they collateralize against, but it's not a ton of assets.
Yeah, there's probably not much there.
Yeah, but it's the same thing as with the businesses that I bought. It was pretty much all goodwill, and it's the only reason they're able to do it is because of the SBA guarantee.
Gotcha.
Right? The SBA guarantees whatever 75. Have you guys done SBA?
This is what we're working on now for this first electrical company we're underwriting.
So the SBA guarantees the bank 75%.
Yeah.
So the bank's exposure is 25% of the loan. So, if you default on the loan, the bank's going to get 75% of their money back from the government. Mm-hmm. That's the whole point of the program. And then the other 25%, presumably you'll be on the hook for because it's personal guarantee.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
do you know what the coverage ratios are? Because it's all projections being in a new market. Do you have to present anything like that to the SBA?
Yeah. So I have to present a full business plan with, monthly anticipated P&Ls, and so a lot of that help comes from the franchisor, right? Because they have projections and Excel spreadsheets and different things to help you work through, number one, for yourself to understand the economics of it, but then 2, to write a business plan and present that to the SBA or to the bank who's getting backed by the SBA. But yeah, that's one of the attractive things about franchising is that if I just hit not even what I think these stores are going to do, my coverage ratio will be far better than if I were to buy an existing. Meaning, let's say it's going to cost me $500,000 to go get a loan and build out one store. Well, that store, one of the stores that I'm looking at and our projections, we think it should be a $2.5 million revenue store, that's going to net probably 20% after debt service. So it's a lot. Like I would have had to, if I was buying that existing, would have a much larger loan. So I like that's the trade-off, right? The trade-off is I've got to start it up as opposed to buy existing cash flow.
Right.
But then ideally when I'm 12, 18, 24 months in, well, now I've got way more equity because the business is cash flowing much greater than my debt service on it would be if I were to buy it existing at that point.
Yeah, it's a smaller amount relative for the growth.
Yeah, so longer time to cash flow, but quicker to equity. Quicker to have a lot more value there. Because if 2 years into a business that you just bought, if you don't grow it, something crazy happens, then you're super leveraged with the SBA, especially if you're only putting 10% down.
Right.
So your equity piece doesn't really start to become. It takes 10 years to pay that loan off if that's how it goes. And obviously you're going to have growth and other things along the way, but it's just a different way. Yeah, it's kind of a different, interesting look kind of when I was looking at the economics of it, and I was like, interesting, very, very interesting. So I can go build probably 3 stores for $1.5 million, right? If it cost me $500,000 a store, for example, which it might be around that. I think you could do it for less in a lot of other markets. I'm trying to shoot on the high end for everything for me, but if you go do that, I just think there's a lot of economics to where you can have a lot of cash flow for $1.5 million of debt, where you're probably getting $500,000 of cash flow for $1.5 million of debt if you're buying on market at a 3x multiple.
Yeah. Right.
All things simplified.
Yeah. I mean, it's lower risk, so it's going to be more expensive.
Right.
Yeah. And do you know anything about terms or any limitations potentially for exiting being a franchise model?
Yeah, there's definitely like an approval process. Like they have to approve whoever's going to buy it, just like they had to approve me to buy territories. It's not a huge concern it's part of the deal. It's another trade-off. I kind of, like most people, won't want to just, I care about obviously maximizing the value of it when I sell it, but too, I'm going to care about what I've built, especially because this is going to feel more like, a startup for me because I'm building it. Even though I've got the support of the franchise, it's going to feel more like my baby than my other businesses did, because they were purchased. So it's just, somebody has to qualify anyway. And I can imagine that I couldn't sell it to their big competitor, right? You know what I mean? So those types of things. But I don't think that, small private equity groups are out of the question, because there's probably plenty of like smaller scale private equity that wants to buy up multi-unit franchise. And I bet you they'll get acquired. I would assume they're going to get acquired at some point too. Who knows, maybe if and when that ever happens. So it was definitely part of, that wasn't necessarily a concern of mine, but it was a question that I asked too.
Yeah. Well, this is awesome, dude. I'm super excited to follow along to see how you do. You have to keep us posted on the launch.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. I'm thinking about doing some, I don't know, maybe some social media content or something, just about the process of, because it's new to me too. I've never started a franchise. So, hey, come along with me and see the headaches and the wins and the exciting and the things that want to make you pull your hair out all together in one to get a retail mattress store up and running, so
I would watch it.
Yeah. Come on.
Cool, man. Well, yeah, this has been a lot of fun. I'm glad we got the chance to link up. We'll definitely have to keep the conversation going, but appreciate your time, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. And yes, it'd be cool to follow you guys, follow your journey as well. So good luck with everything, and definitely holler. If you want to complain about SBA, we can do it all together. Maybe help each other out with the process.
Sounds
you
good.
Might be getting daily calls.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool, man. Well, thanks so much.
All right.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, guys.